Oh, good morning, afternoon, and evening to our listeners across the globe. And today we have a technical difficulty. What's what's happening is that oh yeah, all right. So StreamYard had added a new feature, which is a horizontal and a vertical streaming. If you see us at the bottom of the screen, you're on the vertical one, and you would see right next to the title a phone. And if you see us on the left side of the screen, it means it's a horizontal one, and you have picked the one without the phone on the side. So that's where we stand today. I hope next time, I guess we'll choose one of the two, but for some reason it forced us to take both of them. Well, welcome back. It's been a while. Last week we were supposed to go live. Unfortunately, things do happen, and they do happen for a good, actually great reason. So tonight, this afternoon, it depends where you are, I have Susie, my co-host, with me in the studio. Hello, Susie.
Hey.
Welcome. And we have our great guest, William. Sorry, Fitzroy. I do apologize.
That's okay.
For some reason, I just had a brain fog.
Yeah.
So, welcome, William. Susie, you would like to do the honor of introducing him?
Absolutely. Wow, this has been a challenging start to get to this episode, but I think it's going to have been worth the wait. I'm so excited to introduce our guest, who's hailing from Chicago, as to the best of my knowledge. So whether you're hailing from there, you're just based there, we'll clarify that in a while. But William is a psychic, he's clairvoyant, he's a guide, a teacher, and I suppose ultimately William is the founder of Art of the Seer, which is a beautiful platform for people on a similar journey. So we have so much to get stuck into, hearing about William's story, how he went from being, just an ordinary Joe Soap run of the mill. I doubt that was ever the case. And to when his life became extraordinary, and you really allowed your gifts to shine through. And I think spirit gives you that tap on the shoulder, and maybe you take it up from there, William. Do you want to share how you got to be sitting in this hot seat this evening? So
yeah,
welcome.
Thank you. I'm so excited to be here with you guys. I think it's actually I'm still, and perhaps even more ordinary than I ever was now. I think it's actually the flip of that. But yeah, here we are. I'm a psychic, I'm a medium, I'm a clairvoyant, and especially the last 5 to 10 years, really been leaning into teaching rather than giving readings and healings, which I think is a kind of natural progression of people who do spiritual work for a very long time, a long enough time that you mature into sort of teaching and sharing what you've learned and known. So I'm really excited to be here and talk about this and kind of how I got here and share my story.
Cool. Well, I think everybody who's willing to share the story of becoming psychic and the gifts that you have as a clairvoyant and a medium, they're not run of the mill gifts, like, you know what I mean? And it takes a lot of courage sometimes to really trust the information you're getting. You don't really know until you put yourself out there and see how it lands when you're on this journey at the beginning, especially. So do you want to bring us back to where it started off for you, where you had to take that sort of run and jump? Or
so for me, it's always been like my sort of spiritual abilities and my sensitivities have always been very tied to my creativity. If I go way back into my childhood, which I'm not going to tell you I'm not going to bring all 49 years of the story in, but if we go back far enough, certainly as a child, I was always very imaginative, very creative. I had a lot of imaginary friends, which I would probably call them something different now if I was working with somebody. Like it would be more like spirit guides or, helpers and things like that. Just very attuned to energy and to spirit when I was a child through a very imaginative and creative lens. which, worked out really well for me. I was very involved in the arts as a child, music and singing and acting and dancing. And I was very like I was the one who was getting all the neighbor kids together to do silly stuff all the time, like whether it was like a lip synced musical in the backyard in the summer, or getting everybody together to play kick the can on a Friday night in the neighborhood, and all those kinds of things. I was kind of always the one to get everybody together, I think, if I really look back. And that has been a through line through my whole life, and certainly leads me to present time running Art of the Seer Academy as a place where I'm still doing that every day, where I'm like, hey, let's get together and like make some magic together. Just a little bit different than backyard karaoke musicals. So as a childhood, I really leaned in, or in my childhood, I really leaned into that, and felt very supported by my family in that, and the communities that I was in. As I got older, what I now realized was happening was I was just sort of out of control in a certain way, in that I was so sensitive to everyone and everything around me that whole time that I was doing all those things, I was absorbing all that energy and the chaos and the creativity and the fun from everybody, which for a long time was really validating and really powerful. But then as I edged into my 20s, and certainly after I graduated university and moved to the big city on my own and sort of started to move into adulthood, it just became harder and harder, I think, to hold all of that and hold it all together for myself and everyone else. I didn't have the language or the context of looking at it through the lens of energy to explain or define that. So what happened was I kind of got into my early mid-20s and everything started falling apart, which I think also, if you look at kind of the pattern of the hero's journey, or of the sensitive kind of coming into their power, and we see this in like Marvel movies, we see this in so many different expressions in our culture. Eventually what happens is you can't hold that all together, and you can't just keep doing the thing you've been doing without being conscious to how you're doing it. And so I just sort of hit a point where my whole life started falling apart, socially, emotionally, even professionally. I had always been very successful in everything I chose to do, whether it was a hobby or at school or whatever. And so I graduated university. I had a wonderful dream job just out of university, but I had never been as miserable as I was. I felt so disconnected. I felt so unhappy. By all external measure, I was a success and I was happy and I should have been over the moon with everything. But internally, I was kind of like without mooring or without a center. And so my journey to connect to these abilities has been through the lens of trying to refine that center for myself as a creative. And that has led me down the path of clairvoyance and mediumship and mysticism and spirituality, which, to be frank, and this is the last thing I'll say about this, is like not at all how I thought my life was going to go. How unexpected to be teaching clairvoyance and teaching mediumship as I enter my 50s. I never thought this is what I would be doing, but so grateful that it is. And part of that is just having had such a powerful experience reclaiming my own abilities, that now to be able to share that with other people is just really validating to watch and also to be a part of.
Cool. Wow. Like it really is a hero's journey for sure. It's that when it all starts to fall apart and the ego encapsulated version of ourselves just doesn't stand up to it, and there's a total lack of fulfillment. I can totally see where you're coming from there, and I suppose the last place you'd start looking is down the route of kind of mediumship and clairvoyance and things like that. But it's ultimately what will get you there, because it's your ability, your intuitive kind of ability is what is pointing you in the way. But sometimes we're kind of refusing to look where they're pointing, So I can totally relate to that. So what way do you want to tell us a little bit how you did start to find your way? Like, what was there a practice? Was there a particular book or a teacher?
Yeah.
That's something
I
happening.
remember the night. I remember, we all have these like defining moments in our life story, right? Where like I remember the apartment I was living in. I remember the decor. I remember the way it smelled. Like it's such a vivid memory for me. Um, I was living with two friends from university and we were all exploring different career paths, but it was three of us living together. And it was no secret that I was struggling. Like I was really in a challenging time, and I was fortunate to have some good friends that I was living with that were supportive of me and of that. But one of my roommates took a meditation class at a local psychic school or something. Like I don't know, she just came home one day and was like, "Oh, I signed up for this meditation class," and I remember like my little spite, something perked in me, and I think it was the part of me that like wanted that or I was like, oh, I haven't explored that. There's something there for me. But I remember her saying, oh, I signed up for this class. And I was like, oh my God, tell me all about it. And I was like, show me the website, like, what is this thing? And I remember she went to the first class and she came home and I was probably sitting on the couch watching TV, and she got home and I was like, oh, tell me about your class. How did it go? And she's like, well, I hate it, but I think you should take this class. And I was like, what? And she's like, I think I am not the one that's supposed to be taking this. I think it is you that are supposed to. She's like, I think you will love this. And so she finished out the class. It ultimately wasn't for her, which was an interesting sort of footnote to the story. But she piqued my interest enough that then the next sort of round of classes that this place held, I went and signed up and I took it. And I just remember sitting in this class and the way that the teacher was talking about energy and talking about being aware of energy, but also being able to manage energy with like very practical real world tools. It was like a 2-hour class and there was a break in the middle at an hour. And I remember I went up to the teacher at the break and I said, I don't know who you are and I don't know what this is. And I don't even know how I ended up here, but this is everything that I wish someone had told me, 10 years ago. Like what you are teaching here is the thing that I have needed someone to speak to in a way that I didn't even know that I needed it. And it was a real turning point for me. I ended up finishing out the class and I studied at that school for almost 15 years and eventually taught there. I stuck around long enough to start teaching there. Just really transformed like how I saw myself in relationship to everyone else and the world.
Yeah, I love those little things because if I recall, it just kind of awakened a little memory that you have of what you've forgotten, and it kind of comes with a splash. At least from my experience, it's like, oh, oh my God, I want more of this. And
Yeah.
I don't know if you jumped into basically trying to acquire as much knowledge as possible in a very, very short period of time. But I have the similar experience whereby it's like, no, I need more, and I need more today. And why am I not getting everything?
I think that's it. Yeah, I'm glad we can connect on that because that like it did feel like a breath after being underwater for so long in a certain
Yeah.
way. And then you're just like, oh, more air. And I certainly threw myself in with wild abandon and some might say obsessively, so made it the focus of kind of my life for a very long time. Which in and of itself was kind of healing in a certain way because it took my attention off of all the things that I was doing for and creating for everybody else. And for several years had to like redirect that attention at myself, which I think can also be a very powerful healing. And part of the reason why people get so fixated on spiritual practice in a certain way, if you've been kind of over giving and your attention's been all over the place, to finally have that same amount of attention on yourself can be really healing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it's a shift from kind of looking outside of yourself for, I suppose, answers, for validation, things like that, and then realizing that it's an inner journey. Like it's that inner work that really answers and makes you feel connected to something, I suppose, bigger or greater than you. Like, and as from what you're saying, it wasn't through a traditional spiritual tradition that that you were practicing, or was it? What sort of practice
No,
were you doing? Was
not
it
really.
meditation from?
It's meditation based, and a lot of what I learned is still part of my practice, and still, it's a foundation for that. But the focus and what I liked so much about it was it wasn't attached to any kind of a formal religious or spiritual background or tradition. Very modern in a certain way, and very sort of unencumbered by some of the lineage, the historical lineage of things.
Mhm.
I grew up very Catholic.
Mhm.
I was a good altar boy for many, many years. I was, I think at some point in my youth, I considered going into the priesthood, to be honest. But I was looking at all the priests and thinking they're not having very much fun. So I think I decided very quickly, like, not to do that. But I think having grown up in a very traditional Catholic kind of upbringing, I was sort of turned off by a very formal kind of spiritual tradition. So I happened to find something that felt very modern and very unmoored from any kind of lineage. And that really spoke to me, I think, as a creative, because it's always about creating it now rather than a dogma of like how it's supposed to be done. And I like to think that I bring that through in my own teaching now with the students that I work with. There's not a way to do it. There's examples of how to do it, and then a lot of freedom to find how it works for you.
Yeah, I suppose everybody's a little bit different, isn't it? Like, and people are meeting, you're meeting people where they're at, and they're at different points of their evolution. And I don't think being part of an organized, more traditional religious background is going to hinder you one way or another anyway. You know what I mean? I think this is a gift that you develop, and no matter what tradition you're in, you have to learn how to sit, how to be still, be present, follow your breath. Like, they're very simple practices, aren't they? And it's all really, from my point of view, settling the mind, stilling
Well, and
the.
there's, just to like close the loop on that, it's like, there's some people that really like a 9 to 5 job. They like to know when I'm going to show up, how I'm going to show up, like when I get to go home. Like, some people like a very rigid container. Some people are a little more freeform. I'm a little more freeform. So this is kind of what spoke to me. And I think there's room for all kinds. Like, there's no right way to do it.
Sure.
But that's the beauty of it, which is the creative part of it, is that there's certain part of you that are not similar to others, whereby you bring in your flavor into that practice, and then you add to it whatever you learn from somebody else, and it becomes your own coat. Your well, I was going to put the Superman coat on, but it is something like that, and to me, why it felt good is that because I wasn't confined in a square anymore. I broke all the molds, and then I became something that is just specific kind of to me. In general, similar to others, but there's a specific part of you that becomes part of that practice, and that's what usually attracts people to you.
Yep. Yeah, that sense of you having your own unique energy, and really the healing for you and for the world and everybody around you is for you to embody that and express that. Like, that's really what the world needs. I can't attribute the quote because I don't remember who said it, but there's a famous quote that's like, the world doesn't need more successful people. The world needs more creative people, and people like being very unique, right, and bringing their energy forward. And that is the fundamental of both my personal spiritual practice, but also then how I coach and teach other people. It's not about doing it my way or the way that I have done it. It's me showing you what I've learned, and then you finding a way to digest that and bring that into your world, and then you embody that in a way that's very unique to you. So yeah, you're speaking my language.
I think the art of a seer is a very good description of that, because it is an art. It is really an art, isn't it? Of like how different people see through different lenses, I guess, through their own experience.
Yeah. So after I spent all this time, in this spiritual study, in this space of like very focused spiritual study, to be honest, for several years, what I started to realize is that my personal history training as an artist. So I went to, I said I was very involved in the performing arts. So I went to like a performing arts high school. I went to a conservatory bachelor's program for university. So, very rigid, artistic training of high caliber. And what I realized was that there were some really unexplored, to me, parallels between the training and the path of an artist and the training and path of a mystic or a psychic or an intuitive. That like there was a way in which those two things kind of overlapped that I have personally just never seen anyone explore the nuance of that overlap. And so that's kind of what prompted me to start the Seer Academy, was that space where those, like a Venn diagram, those two things kind of overlap. Because I really believe that the power of like conservatory training as an artist, whether you're a visual artist or a performing artist or a musician, it's all kind of the same in that first you learn a form. Like if you're going to learn, let's say you're going to learn guitar. Do either of you play guitar or play an instrument?
No, but I have
Nah.
loads to do it in my family, so I have an idea.
Yeah. So like if you're going to learn how to play the guitar, the first thing you have to learn is how to hold the guitar, which to somebody who's never done it before, you're like, well, that's not hard, except it's incredibly nuanced and difficult to learn how to hold an instrument because it's unique and specific to your body. There's not one way to hold a guitar. There's the way that the guitar holds against your specific body, right? So that's the first thing you learn. And then you learn a chord. Like, how do you play a G chord? Then how do you play an A chord? Then how do you play a C chord? And the whole time you're learning this, you're like, what am I doing? I'm not doing anything. Like, this isn't what I came to learn how to, I want to play a horse with no name, I want to play a song. Then you learn how to play those chords together. And so the next step is starting to string chords together. Then you're like, oh, this is starting to feel like a song. And then you add melody on top of that. And now all of a sudden you're doing the thing. And what I realized going through all this spiritual training was that if you started talking about, say, clairvoyance in that same methodology or that same way, it starts to make sense why you need to learn to meditate, why you need to learn to ground, why you need to do this. It's like, well, you're learning how to hold your body while you're giving somebody a reading, which is actually like a thing to be aware of, so you don't check out of your body, right? And then how do I speak while I'm also holding that posture? And then how do I get messages or get pictures? And how do I now, and that's the melody line on top of the chords on top of holding it. So I'm sort of sharing this like long example of musicianship on top of this to say, truly, to me, what intuition or psychic abilities really are, it's an art form in that you have to train yourself how to do it. And the way you train yourself how to do it is by studying the masters, right? Or copying your teacher or having a teacher show you how they would do it. And then eventually you find your own voice. And that's when you not only are playing chords or holding the instrument or playing a song, but then maybe you're writing your own song, which is really, I think, the more evocative thing as a creative. But it takes something to get there.
Absolutely. Very nicely put. Very nicely put. Using the guitar as an example. Let's go to when you did develop your clairvoyance. Like when I study higher states of consciousness, I see that these cities are a natural part of the course. When you're a regular meditator and your perception is shifting and your level of awareness and is starting to change, and you have more heightened intuition and just the inner knowing, like you start to connect with this other kind of aspect, or other information is flowing to you or through you. And then there's that choice point where it's an inner journey, it's an internal experience. And then there's the point, now shall I share that with the person sitting beside me or sitting opposite me, or do you have any example or a story that relates to when the information that you were connecting to, when it was just time to start sharing it, when you started to maybe do formal readings or informal, maybe with friends and family, like how did that show up for you?
Yeah. I think like, and this is what why I've created Art of the Seer the way that I have, and it follows kind of the training that I went through and some of these experiences I've had is it is a very solo journey, but I think the best way to do it is just to sit down and start doing it. And so like in the clairvoyant classes that I teach, people are reading in the first class. And inevitably we have people that are like, I'm not ready, or I can't do that, or like, I'm too scared. Because it's really about wanting to be perfect or wanting to be right when you're doing it. We have a great fear of saying the wrong thing or doing something wrong. So we really set the community at Art of the Seer I joke that it's like a teaching hospital, right? It's like, like nobody in your class has a medical degree, but you're all following around, like, and everybody gets to diagnose the problem on their own. And then there's like a senior doctor, somebody from our faculty who's there to be like, yeah, that's close, but not quite right. Like there's somebody there to sort of redirect everybody's attention. So I think, in my experience, same thing as acting, same thing as painting. Like, if you really want to be a painter, you just start painting. If you want to be a writer, you just start writing. And it's through the act of doing it that you start to refine your taste and refine kind of the quality of what it is that you're doing. So I teach from a place that's very practical and very practice-based, and people are doing it right on the first day. 99% of people are shocked and surprised at how actually easy it is and how we're really doing it all the time. You just aren't conscious that you're doing it, if that makes sense.
So you still kind of haven't answered the question. Like, when did you feel that you had to start sharing what was coming through, when, like, before you were in a position of teaching? I mean, when you were still in the more student phase of your own development early on, like, what way was spirit showing up for you? Was it like in dream state? Was it in the, clairvoyant state?
Yeah. So the training that I went through, and is very similar to the training that I teach and that I offer now, is I was sitting as an observer in, I think, 11 clairvoyant readings a week.
Okay.
When I first started. And when you first start, you sit as an observer in the reading, kind of, in meditation, kind of having your own experience of the reading, but also with other readers at the same time. So you start to sort of learn the energetic norms and kind of the way communication flows and all that kind of stuff. I remember very quickly, and I think this just speaks to my ego and my personality, but very quickly, I remember sitting in those first couple of practice readings and I was like, I'm ready to read. Like, I have something to say. And even my teachers then were like, okay, but like, maybe not yet. Like, maybe you should like give it a week or two, like calm down, like you'll get there. But I was really ready personally right away to start sharing what I was seeing and sensing and knowing. I attribute that personally to having, 20, I think it was like 22 years of that, 23 years at that point, of bottled up wanting to express this gift. And I had not found an avenue that felt safe and correct for a very long time. So I think my enthusiasm in that came through just having found something that I was so passionate and engaged in. And I see that in a lot of students that I work with now, same thing.
Cool.
I know I'm still not answering your question quite as directly as you might like, but
well, no, it's cool. It's just kind of, I suppose, everybody's journey is so different, and there's that point when you have to take it from it being what's coming through you and then giving it to other people, and then you realize that, like, there's not just one person involved anymore. Now you're a medium between two, whether it's the sitter or the spirit coming through. So that can definitely be a bit of it was certainly a shock to my system when I realized what was coming out of my mouth made sense to the other person, because I was sitting there going, whoa, where is this coming from? You know, so I was just kind of, I suppose I was looking for that kind of moment of like, wow. But as you said beautifully, like it was always there, but it just had never had the right moment to express in a safe, you know, well held environment. Like I think it sounds like it was a really good environment.
That's the key, I think, to what you're calling forth in that is, it's about the container and having a space where you feel free to say it, and that the other person might have a reaction to that, or might have a resistance to it, or whatever. But everyone's in agreement that it's a teaching hospital, so we're all allowed a little bit of grace to, you know, try and fail or try and succeed, and it's all the same in a certain way.
Cool.
Yeah.
So when this is when did you accept your guides, the guidance of your guides? Because in my situation, and I always take it from my experience, is that there was a hard thing at the beginning to kind of listen or redirect the way I'm working, because I got some kind of a nudge on the side. And always my mind, of course, I use my mind a lot until now, which I don't. It would direct me like, this is where I'm supposed to go. It has to be a straight line. It has to be from point A to point B. It cannot be squiggly and cannot be outside the box. So it took me a while to accept the messages that I was getting until I was able to integrate everything into one and let go. So in your situation, how did that evolve?
I still don't, Ramsey. It's still challenging for me. I have a hard, you know, like I think a lot of people, I encounter a lot of people, I think maybe just because I'm attracting like to myself, but a lot of people that I work with and myself have a hard time receiving, like a really hard time doing it myself. I think some of that is cultural programming and cultural conditioning around, like, you know, we're supposed to be independent. We're supposed to just take care of it. Also, like cultural pictures around being capable enough to just do it all. You know, sometimes I joke that my spirit animal or my archetype is Dick Van Dyke and Mary Poppins, like playing all the instruments. You know, like that. If I had a tarot card, that would be my tarot card. Is like I'm the guy who can do it all. You know. And there's situations and circumstances in my life where that's been very validated and has served me very well to be able to be that guy. So it's hard to turn that off. And it's hard, even now, you know, I've been doing this 22 years, I think, since I took that meditation class. And it's really hard for me when I get stuck or when I'm sort of chewing on something that I can't kind of quite digest. My reaction is always like, how do I control this or manage this or make something happen out of this, rather than going, maybe I need to just relax and like listen and like wait, you know, wait for guidance or wait for something to move out of my way before I step forward. And, you know, I don't think I figured that out. So maybe you can help me out with some stuff. I don't know. Like, sounds like you've got it all figured out.
No. I look as if I've had it all figured out, but I don't. But you know, it's a matter of trust, like you've mentioned before. It's a matter of trust in what comes in and allowing things to just flow through. And I know you do the same practice. So from your perspective, and for the listeners, just a little tip. And how do you allow, or do you accept, or you trust what is coming and passing it on? It's a bit tough question.
No.
I know for myself, sometimes I just like, what are you talking about? I'm doing my own thing. Just be quiet.
It's a great question. And I think when we're in a space of mistrust, we always think it's because we're mistrustful of something externally or outside of us, you know, like I don't trust the situation, or I don't trust this guidance, or I don't, but like really, I think the genesis of that mistrust is always with yourself. So if you can trust yourself, you can handle anything, even saying the wrong thing, or doing the wrong thing, or acting on, you know, guidance that wasn't actually guidance and was ego or something. Like, you can laugh at yourself in a certain way, I think, when you can trust yourself. So I would say the fundamental tool in that, or the tool to pick out of your tool belt, is like, oh, I can just trust myself that like I'm gonna do the right thing for me here, even if that's to misstep or to screw it up or to make something more complicated than it was, and that's also correct. Like that's not wrong. Sometimes we need to make something more complicated. Kind of like this interview, right? Like my schedule got weird and blah, 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 and it became much more complicated than it was intended. But like also, I don't know, that's just kind of how it works out sometimes. And like, I think the three of us did a nice job of kind of trusting that and just being like, okay, well then that's what this is, you know? Yeah. And it's not about trusting or mistrusting something outside of you. It's always about you.
Yeah, I think it's about being okay with not getting it right or not being perfect, giving up the idea of, you know, perfectionism. And I think that's why I could never really charge for mediumship, because I always felt if somebody was paying me, I'd feel this huge pressure, you know, to deliver some goods. And then, you know, I feel like that would really affect me. So anytime I was asked to do it by somebody, I would say, let's just do it, see what happens. And if it was worth something for you, you can pay me afterwards. But I just couldn't handle the the pressure, I think, of kind of delivering, because I don't know, my experiences, you know, when you're a channel for a spirit or you know, something, you're not really the doer anymore. You know what I mean? You're a vessel, and you know, it's not like a tap. You can just turn it on and turn it off. You can, to a certain degree, you can prepare yourself for sure, and you can definitely shut it down. But when you're in that position, there's a kind of a sacred bond. There's something that happens in that space, and it's kind of outside the kind of the confines of left brain kind of, you know, value for money, or you know, I just think it's way, because it's outside of time and space. Like it's something completely, it's not even quantifiable, you know what I mean? That's why a lot of people aren't even sure whether they believe that it's possible until they join a group like yours, you know, and go for themselves. Like I've heard so many stories of people, you know, who went as absolute skeptics to, you know, whether it was a mediumship evening or something, and then suddenly the, you know, the medium is looking at them and they're like, I've got a message for you. And then suddenly the, you know, the complete skeptic goes from just this fear of not trusting this process to their whole heart opening, and you know, this release of grief or emotion or something. So like there is a much bigger hand in all of this, and it kind of keeps us on our toes.
Isn't that funny? I feel like every time I tell somebody what I do, their immediate reaction, I mean, not everyone, I'd say 90%, their immediate reaction is, oh my God, I have to tell you about this time that I experienced something and I've never told anyone, or I don't ever tell anybody that this happened. It's like this, it's this thing that so many people have experiences with energy or with intuition or with other beings. And, you know, you can frame it however you want, the divine or spiritual stuff. But like, we don't talk about it in a way that, and so I don't know what I'm trying to say, but I'm sort of agreeing with you, but also saying like, isn't that wild that like everybody that I share what I do with, they always come back at me with a story of something that's happened to them. And that is like consistent across everyone. Uber drivers, right? Like I get in an Uber. I mean, I don't tell anybody I'm psychic anymore when I get in an Uber, but when I was younger and I had something to prove, I'd get in an Uber and the Uber driver's like, what do you do? And I'm like, oh, I'm a psychic. And they're like, oh, let me tell you about this thing. Now My joke is I tell people I'm a consultant because everybody's like, that's so boring. And I'm like, I know, because I don't want to talk about it with an Uber driver anymore. But people always want to share these experiences that they've had because they don't really have anybody that it feels safe to share that with. But like people, I would say probably the majority of people have had some kind of experience with spirit and just don't have anywhere to put it.
I 100%
Yeah.
agree with that.
And they kind of relate to someone who comes in and says, well, I have this experience. And then they'll go, oh my God, I can talk to someone that is just as crazy as I am.
Yeah. Or won't call me crazy, right? Or maybe will help explain what that was, so that I can.
Yeah. I have a quick question for you.
Sure.
One of the things that you do is Akashic Records. Could you just elaborate a bit on what is it and where is it? And where do you get it from? Like, how do you get access to it? Oh, it's kind of an interesting topic.
Yeah, I love that. So the perspective that I work with the Akashic Records from is that there is a part of your beingness, each one of us, a part of our beingness, that operates outside of time and space. And time and space is a very sort of third and fourth dimensional thing that happens in our body. And we all understand kind of the world in that context, certainly through our lived experience. But there's a part of your beingness that exists kind of above that or outside of that vibrationally. And so when you're tapping into the Akashic Records, what you're really tapping into is the part of your beingness that exists outside of time and space. And so therefore, from that perspective, all of your lifetimes are like days on a calendar from start to finish. And so you can start to look at the bigger picture of all of these lifetimes that you've had and all the lifetimes that you will have from a different perspective, which is kind of like off the calendar, right? If you think of like a calendar on your wall and it's like all the little days and stuff, like what's the part of you that's looking at the calendar, not the part of you that's in the days? Does this make sense?
Yeah.
So when you work with the Akashic Records, the first thing you have to do is learn how to function in the part of you that is outside of time and space, which is a little more difficult than it sounds. It sounds like you should be able to just find that, but it's like a musculature. So you have to be able to shift your awareness and your sort of consciousness out of the normal vibration of the body and of your sort of lived experience into this other part of you. And then once you do that, you can start to read the bigger picture, which is all these different lifetimes. I personally have a great affinity for looking at the Akashic Records not as a way to control the past and the future, but merely like a reference book at the library, right? It's more like an encyclopedia. It's just a whole bunch of information. And sometimes having that information can help you move through things faster or make decisions from a different perspective or do things differently. But it's really about the information, not about trying to control. A lot of times when I work with people on Akashic Record stuff, they come at it from wanting to know the future or wanting to understand the past in a way that allows them to kind of control it or control the present through that information. But I kind of look at it from this other POV, which is it's really just about information. On top of that, I also find it much more interesting to look at one's personal Akashic Records rather than the greater Akashic Records of all of humanity or civilization or everyone at the same time, or even other people. So when I teach classes on the Akashic Records, it's always about accessing sort of your specific records that are relational to your evolution and growth as a being over lifetimes, and having that help to guide and shape your personal journey rather than it being about going to read the Akashic Records of a country or of humanity itself and all that kind of stuff. There's people that do that, and I understand the attraction to that, but that's never really been kind of the focus of my work. It's always very personal and individual.
Sorry, Susie, you have a question?
No, go ahead. I'll come on.
Okay. Would you use this type of information to not overcome, I don't know how to explain that, but to release yourself from past karmas.
Yeah, absolutely. You
And how does it work? Like, do you open up a box and something comes out? There's a rabbit, and everything goes well after, or
yes, that's exactly what happened. No, it is a little bit like that, though. I think you can use the Akashic records to remember parts of you that you left behind in past lives, or have advanced into future lifetimes, which is sometimes, like, sometimes when you're gonna like go to a party and you're already dreading it. And so like part of you is like, oh, like I don't want to do this thing. And that's sucking up some of your energy. Sometimes that happens with lifetimes where like your next lifetime, you're going to be in a awkward situation and you're already as a being like, like I don't want to do that, except it's already there, right? So part of it is like getting that back, or getting back abilities or information about yourself, or things that you've left behind in relationships, or as you said, in karma from past lives. Sort of reclaiming that can be really powerful. But then also, like, we're so story driven as beings, human beings. Again, I grew up in theater, so it's very natural for me to talk about storytelling. And like, storytelling is technology in a certain way. If you think about it, like the ability to craft and share a story as a way of communicating is like the most human thing we have communication wise. Like no other animal on the planet tells stories the way we do. And it's a technology that humans have developed because I think it's so natural to how we understand ourselves and understand the world around us. So I think working with those past lives and future lives in relationship to the Akashic records can also help you understand your story. And sometimes that helps you release some of the resistance and some of the dread and the pain that you're in for being in a certain part in your story. Does that make sense?
Yeah, for me, it does. It does.
I use this at work all the time. I'm a project manager in my day job. And whenever I'm working with a team and we end up in a like sticky situation, or like we're up against a deadline, or like the whole project is going off the rails, I'm always like, you guys, we're just at the part of the story where everything goes to shit. And then like what happens? Everybody pitches in and like we get it back on track. And then, we have the big party at the end. Like that's every story. And when you frame it that way for people, there's like this natural understanding of that where they're like, oh yeah, it's just the part of the story where everything falls apart. And for some of us, that's our whole lifetime. Like our lifetime is just the part of our story where like nothing is going right. But that doesn't mean it's not ever going to go right, or it didn't go right before. It just means that's where we are in our own journey. And so I think sometimes understanding that and that perspective can really help unlock some of the pain and the resistance that we get caught in karmically.
But there must be a point when you're doing Akashic record readings. It's an area I'm not overly familiar with, to be honest. But I've heard people talking about it in the past. There must be a point where this piece of information, or whatever information you gather from it, is going to shift your perspective. So ultimately, like you said just there, you see maybe a bigger picture, or like this is just a fragment of a bigger story, so to speak. And so do you think that doing that, when somebody gets an Akashic record reading, that they get to exercise their free will then in this lifetime to kind of break free of maybe there's a bit of a pattern emerging, or there's something that they haven't seen until this point, and then they have the free will to, I suppose, to liberate themselves, or to change the story, change the ending, or change their character,
Yeah.
Do you find something like that?
Yeah, you nailed it. That's exactly what it is. The analogy I sometimes use is, and we work with this a lot in my Path of the Mystic training, which is it's 2-year-long trainings that are like bookends. We work a lot with the Akashic records, and the analogy I use is it's like the old labyrinths or the hedge mazes, you know?
Mm.
So like you enter the labyrinth and you sort of walk, you know, and you hit a dead end and then you turn around and like that's like a tread of lifetimes, right? Well, what happened, you know, and I'm going to pose this to you guys to see if you have an answer, but like what happens when you get to the center of the labyrinth?
Yeah, there's always a question at the center of the labyrinth. Something always comes to you. Well, the question, or maybe the answer sometimes, or
Yeah.
a new direction. And you always walk out different to how you walked in.
Well, that's exactly it. So one of two things happens. Either you turn around and you walk back out. So you retread the same path that it took to get in there, but now you know the path. So it's a different journey to walk out than it was to walk in. Or you realize that it's all a game and you just like lift out of it and go to a new game.
Mm.
Interesting.
So when you really start to shift your perspective, right? Like whether you're very on the ground and focused on the journey and then the journey out, or you can put your attention in that kind of like I was talking about, like looking at the days of the calendar on the wall. Like when you shift your attention outside of time and space, you can actually just choose a different game.
Yeah, that's a nice way. That's a gamer's way of putting that, I think.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, new game. Just let's
New
play a new
game.
game.
Like,
Or
yeah. And
equally somebody in the arts. It's like it's a new song or a new instrument or a new beat or a new character or, yeah. And I think that is the multi-dimensional kind of aspect of who we are, that we do have, we have multiple roles that we can play, but knowing that we're just playing a role when we're in it, that it's not nothing is set in stone.
and that choice and autonomy is really, I think, the most powerful thing that you can learn as a being in a lifetime, I think, is that you actually have autonomy over your own experience and existence. Maybe
Mm.
not externally, but how you show up in it. So when I talk about the labyrinth and that maze, it's like it's not actually about the maze. It's about like how you're showing up in it or choosing to extract yourself and put yourself in a different maze, right? Um, that having that power is really what it's all about. It can take a while for someone to really fully understand that and embody that. Like that doesn't happen overnight in a certain way.
But can you, before, I know we're going to be coming up to the hour, but you said some words earlier on, and they always really ring home something sort of otherworldly to me. Maybe something kind of more like the words magical, mystics. That sort of mystics journey. Moments. They're moments that we kind of just experience. In 1 minute you could be in a very mundane situation and then something quite mystical can happen or magical. Do you have anything that you would like to share that kind of relates those sort of experiences? Because I think that's kind of part of why we go on these journeys too, is to experience something maybe otherworldly. Or have you had any experiences like that?
Yeah. I'm gonna side direct your question and come back to the answer. But like, I think, I had somebody come to me for a reading a very long time ago, and I've never forgot it because it was such a profound experience for me as a reader. This person had just left their career and they came to get a reading and they were like, I want to know what my life's purpose is. I want to know, I want a life of meaning. And so I want you to like read what is my meaning? Like, what is the meaning of my life or the purpose behind my life? And what this person I think was looking for me to do was to be like, oh, you should go get a job at a nonprofit saving the whales. Like that will be meaningful. Like that is what you're here to do, is save the whales, and you should put all your energy and attention into this specific cause or this, area of concern, right? And that you will find your meaning when you connect to this thing that you're meant to do. But that's not what I saw when I read it. What I saw was actually a really profound truth that's always sat with me, which is, and it was the first time I had seen this and realized it, was there is no such thing as meaning outside of you.
Mm.
You bring the meaning to the thing that creates a container for you to express what is meaningful to you. So that might be Save the Whales. It might be working with unhoused people. It might be working with immigrants. It might be working as a spiritual teacher. It might be working as a project manager at a corporation. Like, in a way, whatever's happening outside of you, that's not going to bring meaning to you. You're the one that brings the meaning to the things that you do. And that's an active choice. That's not something that gets thrust upon you or given to you either by a psychic or a boss or a board of directors, right? And so the reason I'm bringing this up is because I'll never forget this reading, because I told this woman that, and she was like not having it. She was like very angry. I think I had to give her money back because she didn't feel like she got the reading she came for. So always happy to give people their money back if they don't feel like they got what they needed. But I got something really profound out of that I've been able to, I think, to share with others in a different way, which is there is no existence of meaning outside of the meaning that you bring to something. So to relate this back to your question about those sort of mystical experiences, what I think those moments are containers where that part of us is allowed to come out like a turtle in its shell, like that feeling of connection to the divine or to something deeper within yourself or to others in a very powerful way. It like comes out like a little turtle head, and it feels really amazing because we don't know how to activate that with an intent on our own. And so the more
spontaneous, really, isn't it? It's a spontaneous occurring. You can't force it, like you said. You can't make it happen.
Right. It just kind of happens to us. But what I find is that the more you practice creating a space for yourself and an environment for yourself where that can happen more often, and you're prepared and ready for it when it does, can actually encourage it to happen more often.
Yeah, like building that expectation of miracles. Like I always say that, this or something even greater. You know what I mean? I think that's the beauty of living in this sort of environment, is that you bear witness to so many, mystical moments or magical moments, or, just fleeting glimpses even, you know what I mean? When you make this connection with somebody who's in this unseen realm and you're relating to somebody who's sitting in front of you, possibly in grief or whatever. And there's something really, really kind of timeless and precious about that moment, I think. But yeah, thank you for sharing.
And like a gardener, you want to like till the soil so that more of that can germinate, right? And that's, I think, any good spiritual practice should encourage that kind of revelation.
Yeah, it really does. It does. I think your meditation practice will really always stand to you, regardless of whether you're practicing clairvoyance or intuition or anything. Just having a practice of being able to be still and quiet, is for me anyway. I know I'm a bit of I'm mad for the old meditation over here, but yeah, I really do think it stands to us to create those moments.
So nice. This has been such a lovely conversation. Thank you so much for all of your thoughtful questions. And I don't know, this has been really great.
It was awesome. I have a couple of questions for you. Do you have any programs running or coming up, since we still have a couple of minutes to go?
Yeah.
Where would our listeners find you? I know we have this running at the bottom, and it's at the, what do you call this, on YouTube also, members.artoftheseer.academy.
Yep. That'll take you to our community site. The first thing we offer that I actually think it's like one of the best kept secrets on the internet is like every week we have what we call practicums, which is where students in our programs practice giving readings in that safe container like I described. And anybody can sign up and come and get a reading from some of our members that are overseen by our faculty. So it's a really supportive, and I'll say there's a lot of laughter and we have a lot of fun in those spaces. So it's a great way to come get a free reading from somebody who's practicing, and hopefully have a really cool experience. Also learn a little bit about the community and kind of the tone that we set and see if it's a good fit for you. Beyond that, we have some classes, like 5-week classes, 10-week classes for beginners. And then we have longer training programs, Art of Seeing, which is clairvoyance based, Path of the Mystic, which is like a deep samadhi meditation kind of practice. That was the one I talked about with Akashic Records and kind of looking at past lives and future lives. And then Art of the Oracle, which is my channeling training, which is really in its totality like a 3-year training, but it's broken up by years, so you can self-pace your way through it. So there's a lot of stuff to play with. We have like drop-in workshops and I don't know, fun stuff going on all the time.
I know. I was really looking forward to getting on board, but then I was traveling and it just did not work out this time. But I will endeavor to try to jump in at some point, maybe early next year, because it looks like a lovely group. It's a very user friendly dashboard, and it's very obvious kind of how it works, and everybody looks really nice in their pictures, so a very well kind of warm, welcoming environment. Oh, there's the bells.
No, thanks. We'd love to have you and anybody. And then I do offer one-on-one coaching and readings and healings and stuff. So, and that's all there. You can find information about me and what I do there too.
You're a treasure, William Fitzroy. You've been an absolute star guest, and the hour has flown by. I have to say.
I know we were like, how are we going to fill an hour when we first met? But like clearly, the conversation is effervescent. So I love it.
Thank you so much. Really appreciate you being here.
Thank you, and thank you to our listeners. And we'll see you hopefully in a week's time. Thank you all. Thanks, William, for being with us. And we'll see you in 2 seconds after this end of stream.
That's good.